me start off with something that is right up your alley, I am sure. Mr. Michael Moore, who did Roger and Me, profiteering in the name of patriotism. I don't know if you saw this ad. It was taken in many newspapers. It is talking about the stimulus package that Congress passed on October 24th. I should say the House. The Senate has not. And I said on the air the other night that when this horrible thing happened to our country, we kind of made a deal with our government. We would suspend criticism. We would just let them go and do what they did as long as it wasn't partisan anymore. But it's hard to defend this stimulus package as being anything but a giveaway to the rich, which to me is beyond partisan, and it's beyond forgivable. $181 billion, but $140 billion of it goes to either wealthy individuals or corporations. And I'm not talking about tax rebates. I'm talking about handing GM a check and saying, thank you very much. I could give you the details, but it would only make me sadder. Among them, it repeals the alternative minimum tax. This was the tax, the law they passed in 1985, which said no corporation can get away with paying no tax. This repeals that and gives them the money back for the last 15 years. As I say, I could go on, but I think the problem is Americans right now, they don't want to hear it. It's like, hey, there's a war on, we're not going to say anything, and it looks like this has been...
Well, I gotta say first, I mean, this is one of the most disgusting things I've ever seen, and I mean, I've seen these companies do a lot of things, but 1.4 billion of that goes to IBM, 800 million to General Motors, $1 billion to Ford, and this is not a tax cut of taxes they're going to pay. They've already paid these taxes. The Treasury is going broke right now. Bush has proposed that we give them back the taxes they've already paid over the last 15 years. That money's already been, you know, given and spent.
And they did pretty well the last 15 years.
They did damn well. And at the time when our sons and daughters of this country are being asked to go there and risk their lives, that these companies would be taking advantage of the fact that, A, everybody's in this incredible moment where they're very upset still and depressed about what's going on and not paying attention to all the other issues. They're taking advantage of the fact that we're not paying attention to scam billions of dollars for themselves. I mean, this kind of war profiteering, I got to say, you know, if this had happened back in the Middle Ages, you know, if they tried to do that back then, the heads of these companies, their heads would be on stakes in front of the castle, you know, for doing this. I mean, seriously, it's just the most appalling thing I've seen. And I gotta believe when most Americans find out about this and realize what this is really about, they're going to write their senators, they're going to call their senators, because it hasn't passed the Senate yet, as you said. And this can be stopped. It can still be stopped.
But why do you think that the Congress is, by and large, behind this? What do you think the motive is?
But in the spirit of nonpartisanship, and we've been on this show before, I mean, seriously, this is a time when I got to appeal even to people who are conservatives to say, you know what, this isn't a conservative thing to do. This is welfare. This is welfare to rich people.
Well, let's try to understand the logic
run by single mothers.
Let's try to understand the logic behind this, because Democrats are voting for this too. Not a lot of them, but some of them are. So the logic is,
7 Republicans voted
it's called an
against
economic stimulus package. So the logic behind it is that if we give tax credits or returns back to businesses, both large and small, that they will turn around and take that money and reinvest it in the companies and reinvest it in their employees.
Yeah. And you know what we learned during the Reagan years?
Trickle-down thing. It didn't work, did it?
It didn't work. You know what they did, Jeff? Well, they took that money in the 80s, General Motors, and they went and built factories in Mexico and Brazil with the money. They didn't do anything. Yeah. They fired everybody in Flint and Detroit and St. Louis. That hurt the working people of this country. It didn't trickle down to them.
Did we not have a huge economic boom in the 1990s? Then I don't think that anybody...
I have not read anyone who feels that this will stimulate the economy. First of all, there's no strings...
Oh, sure, they argue that. Yeah, that's the whole logic behind these bills.
The logic behind these bills...
If you give the companies back some of their money, that they will reinvest it in their employees and in factories and in technology and put it back into the economy.
Do you honestly think that General Motors...
Is working right now.
Do you honestly think that General Motors, when they get the $800 million check, are going to open a new factory in Flint, Michigan? They're going to sit there and go, you know what? As patriotic Americans, we got to put Americans back to work. So let's go build a new factory in Flint, Michigan. Do you honestly think that's going to happen with that $800 million?
At least there could be strings attached, as there was in the Chrysler bailout. This, to me, is just... I mean, you ask what the logic is. I think the problem is that before September 11th, the thing I was screaming about, you too, a lot of you guys, was campaign finance reform. The money in politics had corrupted our government. I don't think that has changed. I think this is either payback for the last election or, excuse me, a down payment on the next one.
I think if you also, if you looked at the wish list, the Republican wish list 3 months ago, 4 months ago, it is the exact same wish list now, but it's now under the guise of doing something for our country in a time of drastic need. And that I find cynical.
To say the least, to pay people who are not necessarily going to use that money.
But you don't know that for sure. You don't know how these corporations are going to spend their money, and these are still American corporations, right?
Yeah.
So why not give them the chance to reinvest in America? And look, unemployment, right, is at the highest point that has been for many, many years. If you give them back some money, they'll be able to reinvest in their personnel and stave off further layoffs.
But what about
Why
the
not skip
consumer?
the... Sorry, no, go.
A while ago, we heard that consumers weren't spending. That was part of the problem
That's
with the
true.
economy. How does that stimulate consumers wanting to spend more?
Well, companies will turn around and pour that money back into developing different products so that when people are ready to turn around and spend. And also, let me ask you this. Are you for tax break for small businesses then? I know somebody has a 2-person company. His payroll tax is so high, it's enough for him to hire another person, but he can't afford to do it because his payroll tax is
it's very
so
cynical to use these poor small businesses who do need help as cover for these large companies.
Yeah.
The majority of whom, if you look at the list, are in Texas.
Companies getting the money back.
Gets 1.4 billion. By the way, you know, the people, they're not forgotten in this. The wealthy get 140 billion, and then there's 13.7 billion for the poor. That's about a tenth. Okay. You know, everybody talks about, with a tear in their eye, the fireman and the cop, as well they should. But when it comes time to giving money, I don't think the fireman and the cop really get anything out of this.
That's right.
1.4 billion
Because
for
they don't pay as much in
IBM.
taxes, Bill.
GM,
It's a
833
proportional
million.
return.
I'm telling you, listen.
Texas Utilities, $608 million.
Why not
Right.
skip
How
the
many
middleman
jobs?
and give it to the people who need it the most?
Right.
And
You know what they'll do with it? They'll spend it.
Yeah, and they spend it.
They'll spend it, which will make jobs.
This is another thing I think that's with this the stimulus package, and correct me if I'm wrong, but they've also allowed overseas tax shelters now, which used to.
that is part of it.
That's all part of it, which is
Yes.
it's another
All
taking the money out of our country.
And all of these are permanent, as you mentioned, the foreign tax havens, tax shelters, and the 3 martini lunch. That's going to stay. The repeal of the alternate minimum tax, that's going to stay. I mean, that's the bill, as I said before.
How do you get the press to talk about this? Because all you see now is
It's-
war on terror, anthrax, which is obviously super important to all of us. But how do you get the press to start, you know, you don't have to agree with us, but have it be a conversation.
No, I know,
out in the
but
open.
even the Democrats who may oppose this kind of a bill aren't out there all that vocally. You see Dick Gephardt
Exactly.
once in a while, and even his criticism of this is very muted.
And-
because nobody really wants to
Because
take...
we're not gonna be
Corporations, nobody
patriotic,
wants to
right?
go
I
up
mean, you're
against
scared
them.
to be
Well, this is
unpatriotic.
really the first pitched partisan battle since September 11th. And even they're trying to keep their criticism muted on this thing because they don't want to look like they're out there beating the hell out of each other
They
over
don't
something
wanna
like
take
this.
on-
And also, they don't want to take on... These are American companies. It's not like they're taking on Mitsubishi. This is IBM.
No.
And
These
they're...
are global companies. These are not American
philosophy
companies.
is that if you
know
put-
what?
if you give
there's
them
a
the
book
money
that was
back,
out last
they'll
year called
reinvest
IBM
in
and the
America.
Holocaust. You should read about how
read
IBM
it.
profited during World War II with a relationship by keeping their businesses going in Nazi Germany. And here we are 50 years later. The GM did the same thing. They kept Opel going, put the money in Swiss bank accounts so they could continue the profits. These people never stop because they're not Americans. They are global, worldwide corporations with one purpose: to make as much money as they can, and damn the consequences or whoever gets hurt by it.
Wait,
and
there's
I'm
an
telling
American-
you, that's un-American, and we should stand up against it.
What is
Right.
what's the thinking? Why would you not want to give the break to the people? Why? I don't understand.
No.
that.
I was for the tax cut. I think everybody should get a tax cut. I'm all for that. I mean, the level of taxation in this country is grotesque. But I think that you're not giving the companies the benefit of the doubt here in terms of wanting to take that money and plow it back into the American economy and create some jobs where all we're seeing now are layoffs.
What's wrong with the reverse thinking of that? Why not give it to the people?
Why can't you do both? Why can't you do the tax breaks for the companies,
Yeah,
both small
they are
and
doing
large?
both. 10 for
and
them,
give the-
1 for us.
No.
We got to take a break. We'll be back. All right, welcome back. President Bush is speaking right as we are taping this show, 5 o'clock on the West Coast. So we don't know what he's saying, but I do know what he said the other day. He talked about bin Laden. He said that he is seeking chemical, biological, and nuclear weapons, and he said they're a threat to every nation and eventually to civilization itself, which made Maureen Dowd ask the question, basically, she said, our military plan has been too much of a political plan. So far, we have been trying to do it on the cheap with minimal risk, putting off the prospect of ground forces until the last possible moment. And she basically says, if he's threatening all of civilization, why aren't we going at it in a commensurate way? Now, it's still early, I agree, but we were told when the war started that it would be just a couple of days of bombing. And first they said there was nothing to bomb, but I think there was something. But do we risk now looking like we have the sort of political hesitation that we had before September 11th? I mean, is the world saying, hey, why don't you guys get in there and take care of the problem instead of pushing the Northern Alliance, which really is a child on a tricycle, into the battle? Why don't you just do it yourself?
Well, I mean, we could have gone in there with a blitzkrieg and probably leveled the country in 24 hours, but the reason why the military didn't want to do that is because we didn't have a political solution ready to go to do that. You cannot just go in there and eliminate the current regime, the Taliban, without having another regime set up
Like
and
what
ready to
other
go.
regime could there ever be?
Well, this is the problem. This
How
is
long
exactly
would we wait
why,
for-
but this is exactly why we're using underwhelming force rather than overwhelming force, because we're trying to get whoever is available, frankly, and the options really aren't that palatable between the Northern Alliance, which, as you say, is this sort of ragtag group of guys who only got uniforms
but
last
like this
week.
town, this Omar Sharif, this what is the town?
Mazar-e-Sharif.
What is it called?
Mazar-e-Sharif.
Mazar-e-Sharif.
Close.
It's where his cousins live.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Couldn't we just take that? It would give us a victory, and yeah, I mean, it looks like we have the same problem we had before the war. And the American public is saying, look, we're in a different state of mind. We will accept casualties now. Get your uniforms dirty. I don't understand why they don't let the guys do what they want to do,
Well,
which is go in there and kick some ass.
Let me put out an idea here. If I told you that 15 of the 19 hijackers were Cuban, would you say we should bomb Mexico? 15 of the 19 hijackers are from Saudi Arabia. All right, 15 of the 19. Why hasn't the light bulb gone off in anyone's head that says, maybe the Saudis are behind this? Or
They
maybe
are behind it.
Maybe elements of the Saudi regime are behind it, but we
They
can't.
are, but
we
they
can't
also have
bomb
the
our
oil.
That's right. We
Well.
can't bomb our oil. And George Bush Sr., when he goes to visit Saudi Arabia, stays at the bin Laden house, and there's all these other connections that go on with these people because they,
Stays at the bin Laden house.
Stays at the bin Laden house. And it's not just George Bush Sr. There's a photograph in the New Yorker this week of Jimmy Carter at the bin Laden house last year.
You mean bin Laden's father?
The family, yeah, the family. I mean,
Well,
look,
he's the black mullah of the family. Mike.
well,
You know that.
well, yeah, but I mean, I don't want to say there's guilt by association with family members, but George Bush Sr. wouldn't be staying at Manson's family house. I mean, you know what I'm saying? It would look bad, even though Manson's parents I'm sure are good people. You know, I just think we're not being told the truth here.
They are the salt of the earth. I've met them.
And perhaps the real problem is not in Afghanistan, and so here we have the largest country in the world, bombing the poorest country in the world.
Michael. It's part of the problem, and it's a pretty substantial part of the problem.
Why are we bombing Afghanistan then?
Because the terrorists took over that country, the way they took over Lebanon in the 70s. They take over the weak country.
Why did they do that? I mean, we were funding those guys, right? Didn't we spend what 125 million bucks last year up till September 11th funding the Taliban, right?
Well, we funded them against the Russians.
Yeah, but Yeah.
Right.
But you're right, Jeff.
But
We
that
funded
was
them
Cold
even
War
after
era.
we knew they were harboring bin Laden.
That's right.
After
That's
they
my
bombed the
point.
Pole.
So
After the embassies
Who's
blew
the
up,
threat to civilization here? Do we have a part in this?
I'm disgusted that my tax money, just in this calendar year, went to the Taliban when they were harboring these people who killed our soldiers.
Right.
That is absolutely appalling. And again, like Ted said, where's the press on this? I think it's okay to bring these issues up because it will direct us where we need to go to get the perpetrators of this crime and to protect us in the future. And I'm telling you, you know, who is ever going to hurt me ain't in Afghanistan in some mud hut. All right? This is being financed.
What do you mean?
This is being financed and supported probably by elements in the Saudi regime, by others.
You're right.
Iraq, Iran, Libya, and
But
Syria.
the guy in the mud hut could hurt you. He's already hurt a lot of people. You know that. The guy in the mud hut did a lot of damage.
Well, I don't even know if he's. Do you know he's there? The guy's on dialysis. You know, Bin Laden is on dialysis.
But I'm in touch with his dad.
Is his dialysis?
And I'm going to ask him to put me in.
I don't think he's in some cave hooked up to his kidney machine right now, masterminding this whole thing. I think it's much more complex than that. And you know, if we had a halfway decent agency, and of course we've created a new level of government now, another layer of bureaucracy, which I love a Republican president, you know, wanting to add another cabinet post because the FBI can't do their job, the CIA can't do their job. Hey, I know what we do. Let's create another one of those guys.
But part of
give
the
them a
reason
lot
why,
of money.
You're talking about
the Homeland Security Office. I mean, it's like, I mean,
but part of the reason why the CIA and FBI couldn't do their jobs was because of this bureaucratic infighting, and that they were also protective of their own sort of turfs, that they weren't sharing the information with each other. And so the point of the Homeland Security Office is trying to consolidate all of these 36 different intelligence services and agencies to try to get
the guy
share
ahead
the
of it has
information.
not been able to knock heads. You know who needs to be ahead of that?
Rudy Giuliani.
Yes, they ought to put him in charge. All right, we got to take a break. Ted, you were just about to say. And
just quickly, I think we need a president who will say, like Kennedy said about the moon, in the next 10 years, we're going to be off of oil. We're going to have alternative fuel. We're going to have fuel cells that work. You will no longer have to have, we have the money and the brain power to do that. You would no longer have to have troops in Saudi Arabia, which infuriate people in the Arab world. That's not at the core of what's wrong.
Right,
you know?
but
I agree. That's
The other part of that argument is that, well, I mean, the basis of that argument is that we should not be so dependent on foreign sources of oil, right? So we should also
oil in general, period, because we don't have the oil under our country
That's fine, but
to
we're
do
not
it.
equipped to make that transition right now.
But
So
we
don't you
could
think
if
that we
we
should
set
be
our-
we're spending
developing
some
our
of that
own
money.
resources?
But
within
what
the
if we
United
set
States?
it as a
Before drilling
goal?
in Anwar, that's Alaska. That's
Now,
us.
We don't have enough oil in Anwar anywhere in this
But
country.
to make the transition to what you're talking about, which is solar power and some of these other
But
things.
just like Ted made the point about what Kennedy said about putting a man on the moon, we were in disagreement about how were we going to do that. But you make a context like we're going to do it in 10 years, and we figure
for
out a way to
example,
do
you
it.
say we're going to build a missile shield, which so far has never been able to work even a little bit. But if you say, you know what, we are going to do this, I know it looks impossible.
It's not true. The most recent tests have proved very effective.
How ridiculous.
But, it's true. It's true.
They could never build a missile.
You know that there are people out here who want to kill us.
But the point is,
in
if
any
it comes
possible
from the
way.
top, if the top people say, this is the goal. Listen, I just drove the hybrid car, the electric car. It's not a bad car at all. I'm going to get one. It's not that far away if people at the top would make it the goal and would sell it to the people.
Fine, but that's
they
not
don't.
That would take
going to
leadership.
happen overnight. You know, like you said, 10 years.
You know, in addition to
But they
leadership,
don't, because a lot of the
oil from
contributions
Anwar will take 10
come
years
from
to get to the line, too. I mean, if you want to open up Anwar, it's going to take 10 years for it to have an
those
impact.
people who are getting that tax break
responsible
are going to
way.
make sure that what Ted has proposed never happens because they're getting the money to. And this is it's
and
all.
that's where it all. Yes. That's the problem.
Who is the real threat to civilization here?
Right.
Right.
Okay, we got to take a break. We'll be right back. Just reminded me about his movie Tucker. Remember that movie about a guy who tried to build a different car? And what happened to him? Yeah. But electric, that is the way to go.
Holiday shopping.